Thanks for tuning into the Product Operations Summit. We really hope you're enjoying the event so far, as there's even more to come. All sessions are designed to be interactive and to give you the chance to engage with our panelists and speakers, so come ready to get involved with your questions and comments. For access to even more exclusive Product Ops content, check out PLA membership plans at productledalliance.com. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the next session.
Hi everyone, my name's Gabby and I'm really excited to be at the Product-Led Alliance Product Operations Summit. I'll be giving a talk today on product operations and something that's very hard, change, more specifically product operations and change management. This is my second time speaking at the Product Operations Summit. The first time I was very lucky to be part of a panel discussion, and today this is my first time giving a solo talk here. So forgive me, I might be a little bit nervous as we go through these slides here today, but overall just very excited to be here and be part of this community. I hope that all of you were able to attend some of today's earlier talks, and I hope that you'll stick around for some of the talks that are happening later today. As I pull up my slides here, if you can put in the chat where you're calling in from and what your title is, I'd love to learn a little bit more about each of you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, I'm talking about something that's really hard, change. We'll talk a little bit in today's slides about obviously product operations, change management, but you'll learn a little bit more about me, who I am, what my background is. You'll learn about what product operations is for me at Sana Benefits. That's where I currently work. And then we'll talk about change management, and then we'll bring the two together and talk about product operations and change management, and more specifically about a change that we implemented at Sana. As we go through the slides, if you have any questions or just opinions on things that I'm talking about, please put those in the chat. We'll spend some time at the end of today's call going through those, and I definitely, any ones that I don't get to, we'll spend some time responding to as after today's call. So a little bit about me. My name is Gabby Peralta. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. As I mentioned, I'm currently a product operations lead at Sana Benefits, which is a health insurance company making quality healthcare understandable, accessible, and affordable. I am a team of one right now, and prior to that, you'll learn a little bit more. I was a team of one at my previous company as well. I am a product ops pioneer, as are all product ops people in this space, and a lifelong learner. Fun fact about me, I did not grow up thinking I was going to be a product operations person. I was actually a geology major for a little while in college. So I studied rocks and not product operations, but really, really grateful to be in this space and to be talking with each of you. I got into product operations, kind of just fell into it, as I think most of us do. I come from a sales background. So prior to this July 2019, I was working in sales for a technical staffing company. Moved over to SkySlope, which is a startup based in California, where I was a customer success manager. Then we kind of saw a need for product and product operations. So I moved over into that role and started building up that team there. From there, made lots of changes while I was at SkySlope. Won't spend too much time talking about those. But then moved over to Sana Benefits, where I joined as our first product operations person. And my focus in those first 6 months, was learning more about the organization and both the product and engineering teams. So after I kind of give you the walkthrough on my timeline and how I got into product operations and what I'm doing now, I'll dive into what product operations looks like at Sana Benefits now that I have learned the organization a little bit better. From there, September, I mentioned I gave a talk as part of a panel at the Product-Led Alliance Product Operations Summit. Really happy to be back here again. Fast forward to January of 2022, my focus has been creating a product operations vision for Sana and beyond, for Sana for 2022 and beyond. And then now we're in March. My focus is leveling up product operations for the organization and really just using product operations and specifically change management to improve Sana and the product and engineering teams here. If you have any questions about my background, like I said, I'm happy to connect and answer those as we offline or as we go through these slides here. So now that you know a little bit about me, let's talk about what I do at Sana. So I think a little while back, Marty Kagan released an article on product operations and what he thinks it should look like. It was an amazing article. I will link it here at the end so all of you can read it. Sparked a wonderful discussion in the product ops world. He has a lot of great ideas on what product operations should look like. I'm sharing what product operations looks like at Sana to say that it's okay if it doesn't look like what Marty says it should look like. It'll look very different from place to place and from person to person. These 4 bullet points is hard to just whittle it down to 4 on what product operations does at Sana. But these are, I would say, are the top 4 things that I really have been focused on. So that first one there, driving continuous improvement. A lot of that looks like process changes, and I'll go into greater detail on one of those large changes towards the end of the presentation here. But really, that's a large part of my role. It looks like meeting with both product and engineering organizations to define the metrics that we should be tracking, as well as sharing best practices with both the prod and engineering teams. From there, a large part of my day-to-day is establishing and managing internal knowledge artifacts. So it looks like onboarding material, creating a bug board process and improving that bug board process, which is what I'll talk about later. Prior to Sana, it was developing customer feedback loops. So this can look like a lot of different things, I think, depending on where you're at. These last 2 bullet points here I think are really the most important. And I'd like to spend some time talking about these, and I definitely will come back to them as I go through the slides, but fostering a culture of trust and engagement. That is so key as product operations. We are very fortunate, or I am at Sana, to interact with each of our product managers and a large amount of our engineering team, as well as the leadership team of both organizations. In order to have effective change as product operations people, your team has to trust you and be willing to engage with you. So it's really important to be fostering that culture. I included best current thinking. This is something that my current boss, Jamie, says almost every single day. We're a startup at Sana. We're constantly evolving. Things are always changing. What we do today will definitely look different from what we do tomorrow, but we are always using our best current thinking. So that's just a little bit about what product operations is at Sana, a little bit more about what I do. So now that you know about what product operations is for me, I'll talk about the definition of change management and what change management is. So change management, if you Google it, the Association of Change Management defines it as the practice of applying a structured approach to transition an organization from a current state to a future state to achieve expected benefits. So really, change management is a catch-all term for all of the ways of preparing, supporting, and helping teams, as well as individuals, and even entire organizations undergo change. So I'm assuming most of us on this call today are product ops people, or at the very least, we're within product, or we work really closely with product people. If you're in the product space, you know how much that your product and your teams can change. Change is happening all of the time. In the chat, we're going to pause here for a second. If you could let me know if you're currently experiencing change and how that change is making you feel, that would be awesome. So right in that chat, you should be able to type some stuff in. Are you experiencing change, and how does that change make you feel? I've asked a lot of people this question. More often than not, people do not like change. Change is very hard, but that's not to be said that people can't change, as Ted Lasso says here. So now that we know the definition of change management, I find it helpful to break it out into just 3 different components, and we'll dive into those here. So the first component of effective change management is understanding the change. Identifying the change characteristics. I like to start with a list of questions. So what is being changed? Who is being impacted by the change? What is the scope of the change? And what are the positive, negative impacts of said change? As you go through this list of questions, you'll start to uncover even more questions to ask. And at the end, you'll likely have a much better sense of the change and its intent. Once you understand the change, we move into planning the change. So lots of questions here as well. Who has to do their job differently and how? Why this change? Why are we doing this change now? Taking into consideration how many changes are currently happening within your organization. A lot of times there's a lot of change going on, so you want to make sure you're implementing the right changes at the right time. Another important question is who's going to champion the change. Often in product operations, you will be the one that's who is championing the change. It's helpful to find other champions who will help you with this change as well. Throughout this entire, these 3 components, it's really important to think about for your end users of the change, in my case, product managers, what's in it for them for this change? WIFM is the acronym. So really taking into consideration your employees and your coworkers as you're going through this process. Once you understand the change and once you've planned the change, it's time to implement the change. When you're in the implementation phase, it's really important to provide clear steps and timelines for your team for this change. The team wants to know exactly what they're going to have to do for this change and when they're going to have to do it. It helps to start very small with your changes. It can be really hard to make large changes all at once. So try and nugget those out into bite-sized changes and implement that change in phases. So instead of saying we're going to change an entire process in 1 week, say we're going to break it out into 4 weeks. Week 1, it's going to look like this. Week 2, it'll look like this. Week 3, so on and so forth. As your team is going through the change, it's really important to keep your team's feelings in mind. The success of the change relies heavily on how your team feels about it, and therefore how receptive they are going to be to this change and making it happen. So I mentioned on a couple of other slides, a few slides back, fostering a culture of trust and engagement is key for change management. You want to be a trustworthy employee whisperer. You want to understand how your team is going to feel about this change before you make it. So really making sure that you're keeping the team in mind. So now that I've kind of walked through what I think are the 3 components of change management and making change management successful, I'm going to talk you through an example that I recently went through at Sana. We're still currently going through this process. I think that's another important thing to call out with change management, that oftentimes with the change, you think it might be done because the change went into effect. There's a lot of things that you have to do to make sure that that change keeps happening and moving forward. And that brings me to that last bullet point there of reinforcing the change. So I'm going to walk through that example. And that example is the bug process at Sana. I think most of us work on product development teams. With each product, you get bugs, you get feedback from your customers. Sana, I mentioned, we're a startup. We're about 150 people now. Product team is about 15 or so. Engineering team, a little bit more than that. So we didn't really have a bug process when I joined Sana. Customer success, member operations could all submit bugs, but there were no SLAs or anything on the bug boards we use with Sana. So oftentimes these bugs just sat there for weeks and weeks and weeks until they escalated up the chain and the customer didn't have access to care or was running into some other issue. So it was really important as I came onto the team to understand what exactly needed to be changed about this process. What it came down to was how our teams submit and handle bug requests. Once I understood what needed to be changed, I thought about who was going to be impacted by this change. I mentioned a lot of teams. There's product managers who are going to be directly impacted. Our engineers who have to work on these bugs were going to be impacted. Customer success, sales, member operations, there's all these other internal teams who are going to be impacted by this bug board change or bug process change. Once I knew the what and the who, I thought about the scope of the change. So whose work was going to be impacted and by how much? Product and engineering workflows were going to be largely impacted, but the customer success or the customer facing teams a little bit less so. So once I knew these 3 things, I thought about the positives and the negatives of this change. Positives, we're going to be managing our bugs a lot better. We're actually going to be managing the bugs, really is the case. And we're going to learn more about the types of bugs that are coming through so we can be aware if there's similar issues, deploy a fix out for that. And on the customer front, we're going to be responding to our customers in a much quicker manner, which I mentioned we're a health insurance company. Oftentimes when these bugs come through, they can be care blocking issues. So our customers cannot get access to their healthcare, which is a major issue. Negative impacts, what I thought about was what happens if we don't make this change? If we don't make this change for the bug board, things will continue to fall through the cracks. Customers might become upset about their issues going unnoticed and unfixed. And I know I mentioned that care blocking issue as well. We don't want our customers not having access to their care. So I understood the change. Next, I moved on to that next phase, which is planning the change. So thinking about planning the change, take into consideration, or I needed to, if I'm following this change management process, who has to do their job differently? I mentioned a lot of people, but let's narrow in on the product managers. Our product managers with this bug board process, we have to create an on-call rotation. That was the solution that I came up with based on feedback. Our customers are able to contact us from 7 to 7 Central Time. And with this new bug board process, our product managers now needed to be available 1 week at a time for this time frame. This meant changes in work-life balance. It meant changes to their personal life, because now you're working from 7 to 7 versus the 9 to 5 that we normally do. In addition to these changes to their personal life and just working hours, the bug board was just an additional task that originally wasn't in the job description. So now I'm asking the team to go into Asana, look at all the bugs that are coming through during the week, make sure those bugs are getting to the right people to get fixed and being prioritized within our team pods. So a lot of changes on the product side. For our internal customer-facing teams like customer success, what the change looked like was a change to the submission process. So we changed like levels of urgency. Could you mark whether a ticket was urgent, low impact, or like could wait a couple of weeks to be done? So just minor changes on that side. When thinking about planning this change as well, have to think about the why. Keeping the WIFM, what's in it for me, in mind. What happens if we don't make this change? Why are we making this change? On an extreme scale, we risk losing customers if we don't fix their problems. And I know I've mentioned several times, we're making this change because oftentimes these issues that are coming through, the bugs, they're blocking our customers from accessing care. So we're making this change in order for our customers to have better access to their healthcare. Why are we making this change now? Sana is very much continuing to grow, and as we grow, more and more things tend to go unnoticed. So putting this process in place allowed for the team to make sure that we have a manageable way to follow up on our bugs. We have good insight into the stuff that's coming through, and that changes can be made for our customers. So once I had those 3 things down, it was thinking about who's going to champion this change. So there's a lot of things that are changing. The rotation that we put into place. Product managers need to now be available once a week during their rotation, or once every couple of weeks, excuse me, during the 7 to 7 on-call rotation. So we now have an on-call process. Being still fairly new to the team, I'm about 7 months in now, asking some of our more senior product managers to now be available from 7 to 7 was a little bit daunting. And it wasn't a little bit daunting, it was very daunting. Here I am, fairly new, coming in, making a lot of changes from day one after listening to the team. But this was the first very large change. So I thought about who can I bring in to help me champion this change? For the product team, it was bringing in our chief product officer and making sure she spoke at the meetings and helped put this change into place. For some of our other internal, the customer facing teams, it was meeting with the director of customer success. And then kind of down the line, meeting with the VP of engineering, because implementing this process is now going to involve the engineers' time. And so really just making sure each director of each department, and kind of down from there, each manager knew that this change was coming and could help me explain why we were making this change. So if we go back to the slides where it's understanding the change, providing all that information to these champions and having them relay it out down to their teams was very, very important. So once I understood the change and planned the change, it was time to implement the change. So first and foremost, providing clear steps. So I reached out to our product managers, scheduled one-on-ones, scheduled team meetings, made sure I was talking about this as much as possible, to let them know that this change was coming, that I was looking at this process, and to expect something in the next couple of weeks. You really want to make sure that you're giving your team enough time to get ready for the change that's coming through. One note on that is evaluating the size of the change. This bug board change was fairly small in the scheme of other changes that we've made. So the team is only given a few weeks head notice before the actual change came, versus if larger changes are happening, you want to give your team a lot more time. Once I provided clear steps, I scheduled that time one-on-one. We have some product open door sessions. We have all these different meetings where I allowed an allotted time for feedback. It is really, really important to make sure that you're talking with everyone who's going to be impacted by this change. to make sure that they're on the same page, that you answer their questions, that you're considering their feelings, that you're really in touch, you're that employee whisperer, that you're really in touch with what's going on with your team, so you can make this change a little bit easier on them. Part of that allowing time for feedback was scheduling time with the department heads. So if you can't talk with everyone in the organization, which you can't at an organization of 150, making sure that you're talking with the department heads or the managers of said team so they can relay those changes and what the impact is to each of their teams. The key to success with implementing change really is allowing for feedback, being flexible, and on that feedback note, not just feedback on the process, but feedback on you and how you've implemented the change. For me specifically, there was a lot of things that I didn't think of in this process when implementing the bug board. For example, I mentioned that 7 to 7 on call time. I did not even take into consideration that we have people on the West Coast. So a 7 a.m. Central Time call time is 5 a.m. for them. I don't know about you. I don't wake up at 5 o'clock my time. I think most of us, I don't know, I sleep in quite a bit lately. And working from home, I can wake up just a couple minutes before work and make sure I'm there on time. So a 5 a.m. call time was it was a major change for some people. And again, was something that had slipped my mind. So I, again, would not have known about this had I not opened myself and the process up to feedback, have I not scheduled that time for the team to raise their concerns. And not only raise the concerns, but really listen to your team's concerns. As soon as the team shared this feedback with me, we immediately implemented a change. We allowed for, you were already allowed to change shifts, but now you could have someone cover your 2 hours in the morning. Being product operations and really wanting to make sure this change went through, I said that I would cover any open shifts that needed to be covered. Anything to make this change a little bit easier on the team. In addition to providing clear steps, timelines, and allowing for feedback, providing positive reinforcement throughout the way. Sharing with the team how this change has been impactful. Sharing times when specifically to this bug board process, when our team is going through and fixing bugs, sharing out times when that bug fix has really made a difference, which is every single time. But really just giving like positive feedback to the teams, encouraging them to continue on this process and shouting people out, I found to be really helpful as we went through this. As we continue to go through this bug board change, like I said, we made quite a bit of changes. It definitely was not the end of all changes to be made. So that's another thing to keep in mind as you're going through change. So that's a little bit about change management and product operations and how it's worked for me at Sana. I'll bring it back to just this main slide here of, I'll bring it now to questions. If you have any questions, please let me know. This is just what I found to work for me and for Sana. If there's anything that I want you to take away from this talk, it's that really following these 3 steps is going to be key. Making sure that you understand the change, making sure you're being that employee whisperer, making sure when you're planning the change, you're thinking about with them, what's in it for your team. I guess it would be with it. But what's in it for the people that you're making this change for, or that this change is going to impact. And then when you're implementing that change, really opening yourself up to feedback. We all, I think in product operations, face a lot of challenges. I would encourage you to talk to others in this space, specifically that product-led Alliance Slack channel. Share what you're struggling with. Ask for feedback. Chances are there are several others of us who are facing these same challenges. And I found a lot of success and a lot of help within these groups. And as always, my door is open as well. So now I will open the floor to questions. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And I hope you enjoyed it and found it to be helpful.